not just failing at school and being rejected by the school, but it's failing their parents, it's failing themselves. It's that fear of being made to feel embarrassed because the teacher thinks you're stupid, or your parents thinks you're worthless because you've been kicked out of school.
In schools, it's the lack of understanding. That's what it comes down to. The teacher may not know how to act if a person is not learning in a certain way. Now, I couldn't learn in a certain way, so their answer to it was just send him home.
Let's Talk, a 4-year project responding to knife crime by listening to young people.
Why isn't it safe to be a child here in Southwark?
From such a young age, I could see the difference in it, and it made me feel like I wasn't a part of a system, or I wasn't a part of society.
Thank you all very much for joining this Let's Talk Exclusion edition. I've been looking forward to this for a few weeks, so thanks to Michaela and Donya in particular for helping Let's Talk get this organized. So let me go around the virtual room and get you each, if you would, to give me one line on who you are so that those who are watching us can get a handle on the shape of things to come. So let me start on my top row. Donya, you're the first one in. Give us a line on yourself.
Hi everyone. So I'm Donya. I work for the Children's Society, which is a national youth charity, and I specifically work for the Disrupting Exploitation programme, which is a national programme that has services in London, Manchester and Birmingham. I work for the London programme, and we support young people who are at risk of or currently being exploited. So that covers all forms of exploitation, although we have a particular focus on county lines and criminal exploitation. One of our key priorities as a programme has been to tackle school exclusions, because we recognise that there is a very strong link between school exclusions and exploitation, which I'm hoping to talk about later in this session.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doreen Sinclair McCollin. I am CEO and director and co-founder of Elevated Mind CIC. We focus predominantly on young people who are considered to be vulnerable because they're either excluded from school, their attendance to school is very low. They may be on the verge of exclusion, but whatever the reasons, they're not in school. And if they're not in school, then often they're making the wrong choices and doing things that will lead them down the wrong road. So we target them, go into the school if we can. We do a lot of home visits, so we work with the family, we work with the young people, and just try to keep them on the straight and narrow. We offer them programs that are accredited, so they get some sort of qualification, something as an outcome of working with us, and they make fantastic progress, and I'm very pleased and proud of them all.
My name's Joseph. I run Youth Futures. It's a youth work charity in Camberwell. We work in the Brandon estate and the Angeltown estate just over the road in Brixton. We run open youth work sessions, sports activities. We have a mentor program. All of our youth workers are ex-beneficiaries as well, so they've come through our program. And we're currently doing a lot of work doing roundtables with police all around London.
Hi, my name's Michaela. I'm the Youth Engagement and Campaigns Organiser at Just for Kids Law. We work with and for young people to ensure their legal rights are respected and promoted, and that their voices are heard and valued. And I have the absolute honour of working on the School Exclusions campaign with young people who have lived experience of school exclusion. They organise and coordinate a campaign to impact policy and practice, and for wider reform for an education system that works for everyone.
Hi everyone, I'm Anaya. I'm part of the campaigning group at Just for Kids Law. And yeah, that's basically a bit about me. I've got a bit of a cold, unfortunately, so you might hear me sniffling.
I think we've all been there recently. Okay, and on my screen just above you is Rose. Give us a line on yourself, Rose.
Hi, my name is Rose, and I'm a young person on the panel today. Coming with my experience, I've done a lot of work with many organisations, including police, NHS, working with young people.
Hello, I'm Stefan. I work on the School Exclusion campaign.
The School Exclusions campaign. Would one of you Just for Kids team like to tell us what that is?
So part of what Just for Kids offer is legal representation for young people's rights to be acknowledged and heard. And what we were finding in a lot of our cases that school exclusion was a common factor in a lot of young people who needed legal representation, either throughout their school exclusion and when they didn't know what their rights and entitlements were, or they weren't getting that representation to challenge an exclusion, or further down the line if they had become in conflict with the law, have been victims of exploitation, that it was a common theme that they had experienced a level of exclusion along the way. So the organisation seen that there was a need to campaign on this, to look at the root causes of school exclusion, to highlight some of the underlying inequalities and injustices that lead to school exclusion, such as disproportionality and certain groups of populations being more impacted by school exclusion than others. And we thought who better than the young people who have lived experience of this themselves. So we absolutely recognise the young people as experts by experience. They have walked the walk. They know what would have made a difference for them during their journey of exclusion, and they know what the solutions are for their peers and the next generations coming after. So we work very closely with our policy team on looking at where the leverage for changes are in policy and in practice, and where possible, create a platform for young people to speak and share their experiences. And Stefan and I and Rose all have a particular interest as well in providing some type of mentorship or some type of leadership for the next generation. We're actually at an event just earlier this week, and there were some younger young people, 12, 13-year-olds, and I know that some of the guys here might share that they said that it felt like looking at their younger selves, and at the beginning of kind of being at risk of exclusion or being on the fringes of the education system. So it's a really exciting campaign that these guys are leading.
The first thing that occurs to me is that we're looking at the subject of exclusion, and the first big contribution from Michaela is talking about legal representation. So that says in one hit that exclusion is pretty much dynamite for young people's lives and leads to all sorts of chaos.
Parents don't have a clue what to do, when to do it, how to do it, nothing at all when it comes to their child being excluded. And so parents are often told at the very last point that we don't want your child in this school because of the disruption, all these things. And, you know, if a child's sent home and there's any sort of concern about them, parents are not made aware when they should have, when something could be done about it. And so it's a proof when a child came to me, they felt rejected, nobody wants them, nobody believes in them, nobody thinks they've got anything to offer. You know, that every negative thought that they could have about themselves, they did. And the school made them feel like that. You know, I've been in schools, I've heard what's been said in the staff room about a child. You know, if a child's given problems in one class, that means everyone's going to treat this child in the same way, every member of staff, because you know what, we don't need, we work hard enough, you know, we do so much for so little, which is true. Teachers work extremely hard and they do really well, a lot of them. But that doesn't mean when a child, if one child plays up in one class, they shouldn't be impacted negatively in every other class, whether they're playing up or not. So they never get the opportunity or rarely get the opportunity to make amends. And parents don't get the opportunity unless Michaela and her team, somebody like them, are representing them, because they don't know the school law, the education law. They don't know what they can do and what they can't do. They don't know that they can appeal. You know, they can say that we were never told, you didn't bring us in, so we could then just stop it escalating and getting much worse. And so there's so many reasons why the likes of Michaela and her team are needed, because, you know, there's very few people in education who will say, I will go out on a limb for these kids, and I used to, and, you know, but it's really hard, you know, and to get the parents to believe in the education system and support and work with us is hard, because their own personal experience of education has been really bad as well, you know, and it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, parents have been excluded or had a bad time at school. They don't go into schools because their experience of school is so negative. Then the child plays up because the school doesn't believe in them, doesn't want them. And it's just a vicious circle.
The point I wanted to make earlier was kind of a link between the points that Doreen was making and the question you'd asked before about things we'd done that memorable for us in the campaign. And one of them was doing a launch event with the Garden Court Chambers, where me and another young person were speaking on the panel for that one as people with experience. We spoke to a whole host of people. There are a number of people watching, and people from all different sectors that were involved in the process of exclusion. So this would include lawyers, teachers, other people who are on panels for schools, things like that, for local authorities. And they had a lot of different kind of questions. And when you were speaking about legal representation and knowing our rights as young people, we really spoke about the experience that we have as people who have had a number of other experiences that might be linked to things like having someone there to give us our rights, but then it being completely missing everywhere, especially in terms of school, for all young people that are there. And when we were speaking about that, a lot of the people who were involved in law were saying that there's many people who just don't know about it at all. They don't know, they don't understand the process itself, which is really sad. It's as if people aren't really bothered about like putting the effort in for the young person, instead of actually making decisions on behalf, like they're making decisions on behalf of the school, which is a big issue there. And so yeah, it was really kind of enlightening in that launch event that we did. It was really cool.
You came up with a really important reference there, I think, that people making decisions on behalf of the school. Would you like to say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there were many people who'd had a lot of experience on the panel, who spoke about experiences they'd had like experience for years, and it was the same thing that was happening continuously, almost in every case that they had. And it was where the parents, the lawyers, the pros, anybody who was involved, they would all be speaking with the teacher. They wouldn't consult the young person about the situation, where they wanted to be, if they were going to do managed moves, whether the child actually wanted that, if it was in their best interest. It was always the teachers that would be saying they were a problem, that would be driving everything from that point on. So the young person didn't have a chance to know their rights in that situation, to know whether they could actually challenge it, and if they could, what ways could that be done for their benefit. But it was always done to make it easier for the school and for the teachers, and for like subsequently their image, which is really sad.
Once a young child, a young person is on the verge of permanent exclusion or even temporary exclusion, whatever their thoughts, what they've got to say, anything at all is not even considered. And so what you're saying, Rose, is that the young person's not asked what school they want to go to, what provision might be better, what they want to do, because they're not even thought of in that way. The young person has caused the problem for them to be kicked out of school in the first place. This is how all schools sees it. And I know, not just because I've worked in the PRU, but I've gone into schools and done loads of training, this is how the schools see it. And so once you as a young person put yourself in a position where you're not towing the line, where you're not thinking of the reputation of the school and you're bringing the school into disrepute, they're not going to consider your thoughts or consider what you want at all.
When we were working with some young people that were permanently excluded from a school, and just like there didn't seem to be any accountability for the school. There's no, what's the consequence for the school? It's like, it's too, and Doreen might challenge me on this, but it's almost like it's easy for the school to wash their hands of a young person that they were finding difficult, and that young person hasn't had the opportunity, that they haven't been given autonomy, they haven't been given the space to work out what it is that they need. And as youth workers, it's like we're not coming in to give an academic kind of like lesson to young people. We're there to kind of like help the young people work it out for themselves. And it's like, when you've got really challenging behavior, that's like, you know, that's like bread and butter for a youth worker. And one of the things we've always been proposing is that there needs to be kind of like that youth work element in schools to kind of like support young people when behavior gets problematic, you know, so that we can get underneath it and do all the things that Doreen's doing now as well, you know, in terms of parental support, you know, home visits, you know, trying to understand, because it's always complicated, you know, when a young person's behavior gets to that point, it's always complicated, and there's always a lot of unpicking, you know, and it takes a vast amount of energy to actually create space for that young person to work out where it is they can get to and where it is they want to get to. But when they come out of school, it just becomes that much more difficult, in my experience, at least.
Donya, I need to bring you into the conversation. Is it a failure, do you think, that we have PRUs? Are they, as I could imagine Doreen might defend them to a degree, having worked in one, are they in fact the best place for some kids because they get such brilliant close attention?
Yeah, I think the quality of PRUs really varies, which is one of the issues. I think we need sort of some sort of standard measure of PRUs. But actually, when we've spoken to young people at the Children's Society, there's been very mixed results as to how the child or young person experienced the PRUs. So for some young people, they've described PRUs as being built like prisons. I went and visited one PRU that had bars on the window, was very dark, didn't have a nice smell. It didn't feel like a school environment whatsoever. But I've also visited a pupil referral unit that was an exceptional standard, that it felt like a community. The young people told me that they really got on with the teachers, they felt respected. So I think it really does vary. And I think some young people have told me that, you know, they went into the pupil referral unit and the teachers had read their report, and they said that what was on the report didn't seem like the child that they were seeing. And what that shows is, though, on the report, it might describe them as a naughty child, an aggressive child, someone that's disruptive, but they've changed environment and that behavior is not being shown. So it's not, sometimes I think it's not a problem of the individual child, it's that mainstream classrooms cannot support everyone, that schools need to recognise that we're going to have young people that are more vulnerable and they shouldn't be treated as like outliers. We should adapt our schools to include all young people. And when you exclude a child, that doesn't take away the problem, that pushes the problem into the community. So, you know, with alternative provisions, I think for some young people, it can be a better move for them, that they'll have smaller classroom sizes. They might have access to a speech and language therapist. They might have access to a mentor. You know, there could be more teaching assistants. So it can work for some young people, I would say.
Doreen, do you want to come in?
Yeah, so I have worked in the PRU and I don't advocate for PRUs at all. If you can have an environment like a PRU where you send young people, then you can make the school environment suitable to support all young people. It doesn't matter what their ability is, it doesn't matter what their needs are. Schools are, if you can have small classrooms in a PRU, you can have small classrooms in a school. Whatever you can do in a pupil referral unit, you can do in a school. You know, pupil referral units have got a terrible reputation. Most parents don't want their children in a PRU. It doesn't matter how good or bad they see them. Once they go into a PRU, a child changes. I've seen it for myself. I worked in a PRU for years. I saw the difference when someone came in with a mindset that I shouldn't be here, I'm going to work really hard, go back into mainstream, and they decide, actually, it's so bad, nobody will want me. I've tried mainstream again, nobody will have me. Keep them in mainstream school, put the provision in place, all the interventions in mainstream schools. You can do that. A lot of the academies, and I said I wouldn't say this, but a lot of the academies are doing that. So they've got provision in a lot of schools, certain academies, chains, where if they're excluded from the classroom for whatever reason, they go to another department, they're in small groups, they are taught the national curriculum, so they don't miss out on their subjects. They've got whoever they need to be referred to, whether it's a counsellor, whether it's a speech and language therapist, whatever they've got, the resources can go into mainstream schools. So why not do it? PRUs don't work. I don't care who runs them, what they do in there, they don't work because of the mindset of the young people, the families and the communities.
I think the point that's being made about PRUs sometimes being kind of looked at like a prison, or feeling like a prison, is really important to actually think about, because even people actually getting it, like, permanently excluded can be put on their record, and that kind of almost seems like some kind of conviction of some kind of crime you've done, which, when you think about it properly, about the kind of the mentality that you have as a young person when that's put onto you, is really, really crucial in terms of that point on. You can see yourself as someone who's not worthy of something better, that doesn't need to really be not that you don't need to work harder to be better, to aspire to something, but you're already labeled as something now. What's the point? And I think that if people think about the way you word stuff, the way you present things to people, it gives everybody around that environment, including other students, a certain opinion of somebody who gets excluded, even though the people that usually get excluded are people who are vulnerable and aren't deciding to do that because they're bad or whatever. It's because there are situations around them that are not even in their control, which results in them not being able to function properly.
Thank you very much, Rose. And please, Angel and Stefan, do chip in as and when. Doreen, I wanted to ask you about your assertion that a mainstream school could do what PRUs do, but surely there are staff numbers questions. Isn't arithmetic against the big school?
Absolutely. But what I'm saying is that mainstream schools can get it right. If the teachers are trained properly, they are trained to deal with behavior. Because most of the time in mainstream schools, teachers are very reactive, you know, they become very defensive. If a young person, you know, the likes of Stefan, you know, Stefan, I've got to say, you young black lad walk into the classroom, he's got his hood on, they don't ask to take it down or say we've got a dress code, they're in their face straight away, the attitude changes. And it's just the way you speak to a young person. Mutual respect is so important. If you show respect, you often get respect back, you know, and so I know that teachings are really hard. I've been a teacher for over 25 years. I know what the job is like, but what I'm saying is that mainstream schools, if the government invested in the staff and trained them, if they put in specialist staff within mainstream schools and resource those mainstream schools properly, you wouldn't need PRUs, you wouldn't need alternative provisions. Can I also just quickly say to Rose, you are right that young people are labelled when they go into PRUs, and most of them feel, and their mindset is, I'm no good, I won't get a good job, won't come out of this with anything because of this label. But, you know, labels can change. And so I had, when I was the head, 3 young people who went to university. You know, I had young people who went into brilliant roles, you know, they went on to sixth form, and it depends how much they change. It depends on the report, the references they're given, but it depends on their mindset and how much they believe in themselves and how much what they know they can do. So they can turn their lives around, and many of the young people I work with do.
I didn't actually realise, Rose, that you can get a record from being in the PRUs. That's a new learning for me. I'd be interested to know what that looks like. I didn't realise that was an additional risk. And I just wanted to, you know, just build on what Doreen was saying about the teachers, because, you know, teachers are there to primarily, you know, provide an academic service, you know, like teach young people something. And, you know, it's like often, you know, some young people in inner city areas, you know, what they actually need is that, you know, is before they can even get to the academic, they need the personal development. You know, it's like they might need anger management, you know, they might need, you know, just to learn, you know, new communication skills, you know, new listening skills, new, you know, just like how to manage different areas of their own, you know, personal being. And that, you know, teachers aren't really equipped to do that. You get some amazing teachers who've got a natural gift to do that, and I've met an amazing teachers, but it's not an expectation. It's not something that's specifically trained on the level that, you know, I think, and I think a lot of people think is necessary to really reach those young people. So if those young people don't get access to that personal development support, then some of, it can spiral for them. And alongside that, when things get complex at home, when things get complex in the community, and all of these pressures are coming in, it's like, where's the young person's support with all that? And that's where it can start spiraling. So that holistic approach, I'd say, is essential to avoid these issues spiraling.
Stefan, you want to come in here?
I just feel like in schools, it's the lack of understanding. That's what it comes down to, because the teacher may not know how to act if a person is not learning in a certain way. Now, I couldn't learn in a certain way, so their answer to it was just send him home. Even though they was paid to teach me, their answer was, oh yes, just send him home, he's misbehaving. Even if I wasn't misbehaving, it will be a top go-to just to send me home.
What kind of age? Sorry, Stefan, what kind of age was that happening to you?
My mum said from reception all the way up, because I got certain learning difficulties. So with that comes a job in itself. My thing is, some people come to work just for the money, and some people come to work because they love their job. And it's splitting the difference between people who love their job and come to get paid. And I feel like I was getting the teachers that were just coming to just get paid and go home, because they never understood where I was coming from. Every time it was my fault. How could it be your kid's fault? He's still learning. He's still developing certain things, certain mind thoughts. Just because I can't sit down for a long amount of period doesn't mean I don't want to learn. It means that I'm getting restless at that moment. So I think what they could have done then was say, look, how about you do 20 minutes of work and 10 minutes you can walk around? And at least that would have been compromising and helping me. And then I would wanna work with you. But for me, it was like it was working against me. The whole system was just working against me. It said it was for me, but I believe it was solely just to work against me.
And the system is still like that now, Stefan, and you're right, it's a lack of understanding. But what I'm saying, I keep saying this, that if the government invests in these schools and put people in these schools who are trained, they would have recognized that in you. They would have recognized that you've got a need that's not being met in the classroom. They would have done something about it. And it's still nothing's been done. And still young Black lads, especially like yourself, are still being excluded for exactly that reason, because they've got targets to meet. And if you're not towing the line and enabling them to meet their targets, they're not going to be confrontational with you anymore. We don't have time, just kick you out. That's what it's all about.
There is provision, isn't there, to challenge an exclusion, but I guess
yeah.
A lot of families are going to struggle to get involved in that kind of heavy process. Would that be a fair comment? Michaela, do you want to come in on this? I see, Donia, I know you want to come in. Oh, and Angel too. Come to you both in a second. Michaela, do you want to comment on what I just thought?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we would definitely have the viewpoint that just for kids that the system is rigged against families. It's a very costly appeals process. It's often one family or one individual going against a whole institution with all of the resources that they have behind that. And there are certainly a lot of times it's just weighed in favour of the school. And whenever we look at where power sits within the whole structure, it's a very disempowering process for a young person and a family. And that's a young person and a family who are in a position to actually challenge the exclusion. So many go, as has already been mentioned, so many go without even knowing that they have a right to challenge. In most cases, there is no legal aid. And this is, done in certain organisations that have to source their own funding in order to be able to offer free representation. Yet we know that children and young people on free school meals are 4 times more likely to be excluded from school than those who aren't. So we know that there's that intersectionality with poverty. We know that it's more likely to be impacting on families that don't have the means. So whenever it comes to the challenging process, we know that it's very unrealistic that these families are going to be able to navigate that.
I was just going to touch on what Doreen and Stefan had to say about teachers who kind of potentially come in just to treat their job as a job and go home, and others who enjoy their job in a sense. And I feel like, although, yeah, that's very important, and Doreen mentioned training being put in place for these teachers, I feel like it should also be a kind of basic empathy towards the children that you are teaching. And again, understanding, if that makes sense. It should be the teachers who are being put into these positions should be properly screened when they get their job to know that they're actually going to do a decent job, if that makes sense. That's how I feel personally, because yeah, we all have certain days where we feel a certain way, but to be able to not treat a child with basic human respect, I don't feel like that's right. And in terms of PRUs, I feel like, again, I don't really condone in PRUs. I feel like there can always be, schools are big enough to put a separate place, a separate room or something in place for children who are in need of extra attention and stuff, because with PRUs, although they're pushing whatever dynamic they're pushing to give attention to these younger people, you don't get as much opportunity in PRUs, like point blank. Most PRUs, you don't have the opportunity to do as many GCSEs as you would in a mainstream school. Absolutely. So there's more negative, there's more negatives than positives when it comes to being in a PRU. So I agree with Doreen that you can succeed coming from a PRU, but there is less opportunity.
Do you think that it can make a difference with young people in schools if the teachers who are teaching them come from a similar geographical area to the students? Because or even from the same community, or even positive role models, how do you think that would impact on yourself and the young people you work with?
I think that would make a big difference, because anywhere you go, and every human being, if you go somewhere and you see somebody that looks like you, you'll feel comfortable, you'll feel more at ease. And if you're in a classroom, I hope I'm answering your question correctly, but if you're in a classroom with a diverse range of teachers, people that you can kind of relate to, it makes more sense, other than kind of having your backup and maybe you'll get in trouble by a teacher that doesn't look like you, and you'll feel as though you're being targeted or discriminated against. Do you know what I mean? So to have a kind of more diverse workforce definitely is important.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, you answered it very well, thank you.
Let me bring in Rose before we go on anywhere else.
I wanted to speak about the SEND situation, and about how I think the lack of understanding, the lack of knowledge, the lack of education when it comes to young people who either one are diagnosed with a learning difficulty or disability and are in a mainstream school, or haven't been, but definitely have something that's causing them to behave in a way that's not typical for them, what they see in a school. I think that's a massive issue, because they don't understand it. They treat everything as negative, as a bad behavior, as something that's abnormal, that needs to be fixed in some way, when maybe it's just that you need to tailor things with the way you're doing things in your classroom, in your school. Because everything from all kinds of stimuli, it could be the lights, it could be the noise in a classroom, it could be the type of seating you have, the arrangement of the classroom, all kinds of things could be affecting things. And you could you like not you, sorry, I mean teachers and I keep saying that, but like I feel like sometimes they tend to take things personally. Like they'd rather get angry at a student instead of trying to understand that maybe perhaps they don't even understand why they actually behave that way, why they react that way to a certain thing, because it just disturbs them that much. And something that even happens is sometimes those kids either one get taken out of school by their parents, because there aren't many schools for kids with learning disabilities, but there are so many schools that are like typical schools, where many kids who are SEND have to then conform and fit in when they just can't. With a normal school environment, it's already like quite I don't want to say dangerous, but it can be really hard to go through with things like bullying, image, all of that stuff. It's a very difficult period in your life to be at that age in a secondary school. And when you're pulled out of school, parents can then risk getting in trouble for their kids not being in school for long. But I think that they need to think about, why are those kids actually not in school? What should you actually put in place to help those kids actually flourish if you're going to put them into a mainstream school? And I think there should be spaces available for them where there isn't so much distraction, where they can't learn properly, because it's not something that they're deciding to do. They're not deciding to be lazy. They're not deciding to not focus. It's just something they can't manage without something external being able to support them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, perfectly. Stefan, you've still got your hand up. Did you want to come back in here?
Yeah, growing up in the area known for violence, growing up in that type of area, but what they don't understand, when you put people into PRUs, you're only putting different rival gang members into PRUs. And there's a perfect example by someone died outside of a PRU in London. I think it was around 2010. So all you're just doing is putting angry people with angry people that got problems with each other. So how is there any learning that's going to be getting done in these PRUs? And there's a factor of safety. Some people ain't going to want to learn or go to these PRUs because they're scared for their life. Or if they do go there, they're going to carry something. So I really think PRUs are a bad thing. That is a pressure cooker. At one point, it's going to explode. You don't know when, but you know it's going to explode. And I feel like there's a lot of people that want to learn, want to go to these PRUs and want to learn and want that second chance. But how could they get that second chance if it's surrounded by different circumstances like violence? Or even the teachers in these PRUs, they don't want to teach because they feel like we don't want to learn it anyway. And I know people that's been to PRUs, and they sent me to a PRU once, and I was in there for a day. Then exactly what I was talking about. I had an altercation outside the school. They put me in another area where they wasn't supposed to put me, and they said that was the only thing that they could offer. So when you look at it from that side, my safety wasn't a concern for them.
Why did you go then? You know, if you're sent to another area, you know you're not going to be safe. Why did you go?
Because at that age, you really, like when you come from that place, you're not scared of these type of things. Like, and plus it was my mom. My mom was telling me to go, and with my mom, when she's telling me so much times and she's looking at me with a look of disappointment, I just said, you know what, I'm going to try once for her. Even though I might get seriously injured, I'm going to try once for her. And when that incident happened, what they said to me was, I was the instigator, but how could I be the instigator if it was 15-1? I can't be the instigator in that. But because of my old history, they wanted to add 2 and 2 together.
That's really powerful testimony, Stefan.
Yeah.
Donia, you've been waiting a while.
Yeah, no, I appreciate like the honesty coming from Stefan there, and I just really wanted to bring in the reality of what he's saying is happening to a lot of young people, where they're being exposed to things in PRUs and the risks to exploitation are going up. So either they're being exploited already within their mainstream, and then they get excluded for behaviours that are linked to that exploitation. Or they're excluded from school and they don't have structure, they've got a reduced timetable, they're feeling demoralised, they're feeling low well-being, they're not feeling a sense of hope for the future. And so they're easy targets to be exploited. And also exactly what Stefan was saying is happening in many areas of the UK. I know that colleagues from Birmingham have been talking about the same things with PRUs, putting young people from rival gangs in the same area, and then conflict and violence exploding within those pupil referral units. So this is the harsh reality, what Stefan was saying, we are seeing happening on the streets, and loads of young people are telling us. So what essentially we're doing when we're excluding a child is that we're actually putting them at more risks, and the outcomes for the child following the exclusion tend to be really, really poor.
Rose, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a different point, but kind of on the same path. I think that one of the biggest problems with stuff like that, with youth violence, exploitation, all that kind of stuff, when young people get involved in these kinds of things, is poverty. And I think if the government maybe focused a lot more on just actually trying to tackle these issues that are affecting young people especially, a lot of it would reduce, because they wouldn't have the need to be on the streets. And when you're on the streets, you're already at risk of many other things. That there isn't a need to somebody wanting to get into an environment where things become dangerous. It's just that when people feel like they have to go and steal food, when they feel like they have to go and do something for survival, that's pretty much what it is. You haven't got a choice but to kind of go against somebody to do that. And then that's where all these kind of beef and things like that come up. And I think if they really focused on that, a lot of this would be reduced. It wouldn't be gone, but it would be reduced by a huge amount, because not all the kids out there who are involved in these things are necessarily doing it because it's fun, because it's just their lifestyle, because they want to do it. They're actually scared. And I feel like if you focus on actually trying to tackle the core of that issue, especially at home, it would really help them really focus on the things that are important for them, which would be their education. They wouldn't end up in these situations anymore, or as much as before.
Can I ask you, young people particularly, because you're all speaking so powerfully about this subject, what do we do about mainstream schools if we're to avoid what Stefan has just been describing?
What I think should be done, exclusions should be the last result in someone's head to ever think for a child to get kicked out of school. What they should really do is not send them to Proust. If you're going to exclude them, send them to a different school in a better location to test that out, to see if a better environment is going to make him learn even more. Because sometimes it might be the location of the school or the people that's around that child at the moment. That's the reason why he can't learn. Sometimes it's difficulties. Sometimes that school might not have the facilities. So why couldn't the government move that child to a different school so he can get the better opportunities? Because at the end of the day, the kids of today are our future. So why ain't they investing more into things like that? And why are they investing into proofs that don't work?
I feel like more support for young people should be put in place in the mainstream school, and support as in specific individuals, whether that's aside from a specific teacher, they're assigned to speak to young people, and especially young people, because when a young person or a student is due to be excluded, there are always quote unquote red flags in a sense. So there should be some kind of intervention process to avoid exclusion, because to be honest, I don't really agree with exclusion, and more kind of security and protection for the young people who are vulnerable. And in terms of exploitation, like it's been a fact that kind of gangs and stuff go and target schools for certain young people, and proves as well, like to kind of criminally exploit children. So as I touched on before, security outside the schools, just people watching out for young people. That's what I have to say.
Speaks to the heart of things, Donya, I think, doesn't it? I mean, you sit professionally in the world of disrupting exploitation. How do you feel listening to Angel just there?
I think she makes a really good point once again, and it's children will be children, and that mistakes are going to be made, and children shouldn't be punished for being children. I really like that point, and I think it ties into the fact there's a lot of unmet needs behind the behaviour. That behaviour is a form of communication, but there could be a whole host of things going on for the child or young person. There could be mental health problems. There could be domestic violence in the family home. There could be addiction issues. There could be criminal exploitation, county lines like we've been talking about. So our child shouldn't be punished for behaviours that are linked to unmet needs. And I know that in other areas, for example, Scotland, they seem to be modelling better practice in education. They don't have these exclusion problems like we do here. And also they're talking about things like nurture programmes. We're supporting relationships, trusted relationships within schools. We're focusing on well-being. We're actually measuring the well-being of children to support them, rather than these more punitive methods. Because I think a lot of young people I've spoken to have said, you know, it seemed like I'm getting excluded for minor things like school uniform. Should we be excluding a child over uniform? I don't think so. So I really support what Anaya is saying. It's a child's right to be in school, so they should be remaining there.
Rose, do you want to add something here?
Yeah, just an answer to your question. I think one of the things that would be really helpful for schools is to actually stop focusing on discipline as their main kind of model for how they function as a school, and I think more on things like cooperation, actually allowing the children to have some freedom, some choice, some autonomy over themselves in what happens in schools. I think they need to include things like a good recreational area where they can actually have time to actually play games, not things that could incite bullying, like social media, things like that, but just games like most schools have nothing at the moment. It's just a field, and anything could happen in that. You get bored, you find something to do. And I think if they had areas where you could actually be distracted by healthier things, where you could just play games, have an actual break from the constant learning, constant teachers, constant being told off, it would really help your concept of what school is to you as a young person. And I think it would also allow for more mutual respect between young people and teachers, because I think one of the biggest issues in a school environment is the fact that no one understands each other. So it's either the teachers are saying, you know, the kids don't understand them, the kids are the problem, or it's the students saying that the teacher don't understand and they are the problem, when really both sides have issues, but the kids are there to be taught. They haven't developed yet. They need time to develop. They need that space. They need to also understand that their voices are important as much as the teachers are. So I think that's so crucial in that, and that would allow them to actually enjoy their time there instead of feeling like they're in some kind of institution, which is what it feels like, from everything down to what Donya was saying about uniform. Everything just makes it feel like you're nothing. You're just there as one of the numbers, just a student to be there, to be given information, instead of actually being a valued member of whatever, of the school environment, really. I hope that what I said makes sense.
It does make sense. Yeah, there's an undercurrent here to the whole world of education, which is that it's business before it's education. Because the point of education is to produce characters, in my view, not people who've passed a number of certificates. But particularly a thought for Stefan, Rose, and Angel, because you're most recently out of the education system in sort of secondary school age. What are the overbearing factors that produce fear in young people in urban settings?
I think that's really a mixed bag, because it really depends on all kind of factors around you, because it could be your family, it could be all kinds of things. So I think it could vary from so many different factors. But if somebody wants to make a point.
Joseph, you've worked with young people for 10 or 12 years in Camberwell, and the Brandon estate where you have focused work is a tough area. It's known murders in the last 3 years. So yeah, I mean, life is not straightforward.
I mean, fear is such a personal thing, and it shifts on a week to week, isn't it? I mean, it's like we had 3 young men in a car last week. One of them's a youth worker, and a guy just came into the car, opened the door, and just stabbed one of the guys in the car. And it was a case of mistaken identity. But the impact of that is for the next 2 weeks, all 3 of them are like, right, do I want to be coming to this area? I'm coming here for work, I'm coming here to see friends, but like, and that fear, when your life is at risk, is immense. And that fear is something that a lot of young people have. It's like around the, if there is a local gang, or if there's young people in that area, or older people who are targeting other young people, But then on the other side, there's fear around teachers. There's massive fear around police. It's like the way a young person will cross over the road or just avoid engaging with a police officer, or even consider whether they would call a police officer if they felt that they were in danger. It's so yeah, I mean, I struggle to speak for the young people, but those are definitely things that young people have spoken about in terms of fear. Fear about the future as well. Am I going to be able to bring in enough money? How much? I'm scared because I don't have money to pay for the gas, so I can't get heating on at home. And it was interesting. I can't remember who said that, but it's like that kind of essential poverty level motive has been for a couple of young people that I've known to be an initiator into crime. Where they've robbed somebody to get some money to pay for the gas meter at home because it's freezing at home and mum doesn't have any money this week. So it's like there's so many fear factors there. And it's always going to be a holistic thing, isn't it? There's all these different elements that are contributing to it.
The biggest thing for me, or what is so evident from everything they say, is not just failing at school and being rejected by the school, but it's failing their parents, it's failing themselves. It's that fear of being made to feel embarrassed because the teacher thinks you're stupid, or your parents thinks you're worthless because you've been kicked out of school, or you can't even read, you can't do this, and nobody takes the time to see what the underlying reasons are. That's the fear of being made to look small, as if you're worthless, and people fight and kill for that because somebody points the finger and say you're rubbish, you can't even bring money and you can't do this. Being told all these negative things about yourself, or somebody implying it, that you're unworthy, that's what everyone fears. But in particular, young people, you're failing yourself and failing everyone who matters around you. And as much as they say, I don't care, I hate school, don't want to be here, they don't hate it, they do want to be there. But defense mechanism to say, you're rejecting me because you think I'm rubbish, I'm going to then play up and show you, exactly, if this is what you want to see, this is what you're going to get.
Donya, pick it up.
I just wanted to take an opportunity to just read a few quotes from young people that we'd spoken to on my programme, because I really think it hits home about fear. And this is in regards to their school and their local areas and why they don't feel safe. So one young person said, you meet people on the streets. So I think there is a link between homeschooling and crime and exploitation. Another young person said, when you live in a deprived area, then there's nothing else you can do apart from going into crime because you're bored at home. And then another one is, where I live, I'm surrounded by gangs and stabbings. What do they expect from us? If we live in a place like that, anything that is positive, like youth clubs, gets shut down. And just the last one I wanted to read as well. There's more like gang kids in alternative provisions. The way they act in that, talking slang, smoking weed, talking about stuff they do, robbing. It's where all the naughty kids go. When you get excluded from school, you go to an AP. So I just thought some of those quotes really relevant to the conversation about fear, about exploitation. And I wondered whether any of those points resonated with anyone on the call.
Young people are often suffering the consequences of a society that we have created, and in a society that has gross levels of inequalities, of injustice, and our young people are often failed by the systems that are set up to protect them in a way. And I think that even looking at schools, we know that Black Caribbean children and young people are 4 times more likely to be excluded than their white peers. That's institutionalized racism. We need to call that for what it is, and that's a reflection of a racist society that we're living in. And I think that again goes to the failure of that system to not only not protect those young people, but actually to perpetuate the failures that we're seeing in society. So I think that often young people are having to respond and react to these failures in a way, in a time of their life where they're still developing, and they've still got so much going on. We expect a whole lot from our young people to be able to respond to failures that have been created by society. So there's no wonder that a lot of their actions are driven by fear, because it's quite a scary place that we live in, I think.
From carrying on from the point about fear, I think something that's really affecting a lot of young people and making them really nervous, similar to what Doreen was talking about, was about kind of fear of the future, especially when you come from somewhere that really is like stricken with poverty. The young people often end up as the breadwinners, as the people who are meant to pick up that family. So they end up with so much responsibility, thinking about far off into the future, well beyond they're even capable of actually actualizing in terms of what they can actually do at that point in their life. They have no idea what that really is, but they've got to force themselves to really plan out their entire lives for the purpose of somebody else. And also when it comes to schools, you're forced to then have to pick out courses that apparently you're going to still want to do and want to pursue that career well off into your future. You have so much responsibility at a time when you have no idea who you are, what you even like, anything about yourself. That will cause you so much fear in that point of your life, because at this point you're already confused by everything that a normal kid would be confused about. But now you're confused about which side you should pick. Should you just pick, your existence to be there to support somebody else, or should you be there to actually do something that you want to do, make something out of yourself for your own benefit? And that's something that's really frightening, and that's something I've experienced as well. And it's a horrible place to be in, because you're not allowed to be a child. You're forced to have to be an adult in a time when the point of you really growing up is to actually understand yourself. You don't know who you are until you're past 25, something like that. But you're having to make up this kind of person out of thin air, really, to just make sure that you can give other people the confidence in you that you know what you're doing and you're going to sort things out for them, when you have no idea what you're doing for yourself. And I think that's just it's really sad.
Thank you, Rose. Angel, you've wanted to join in.
What Rose just said about fear of the future, I feel like that goes both ways, because this is not really answering your question, I'm just adding on to what she was saying. It kind of goes both ways, because when a child is kind of faced with exclusion, I'm going to talk about it in the kind of exclusion process. When you feel like you're about to get excluded, you're fearful. That's when fear kind of steps in, and then you're scared or fearful that you're going to get excluded. Then it's kind of fight or flight. I feel like someone mentioned that before. And if you fight, then most of the time when you fight, from my experience, the exclusion process, you end up in a pupil referral unit or an alternative provision. Then fear comes into play in a young person's life in different aspects, like fear of where they're going to go, fear of gang violence, fear of a new environment. Do you know what I mean? So fear comes into play in the whole process, if that makes sense. So why it goes two ways is because at that point, when the young person is feeling fearful of all of these things, they don't get the opportunity to have fear of the future. Do you know what I mean? They're so stuck in a here and now situation, like, wow, I'm in this situation. They forget that they're a child, like Rose said, they forget that they're children, and they forget that they even have an opportunity to have a better future, if that makes sense. So I feel like that all stems from the exclusion process, and children can be put through that process. Children can be put in like really detrimental situations, if that makes sense. It's just a point that I wanted to.
Thank you, Angel.
raise.
Stefan, you've got something to add of your own.
Yeah, just that when I was going to school, it wasn't the fear of, like, after a while, it stopped being the fear of getting excluded. Like, because after they excluded me, the wrong people got their hands on me. So my fears all changed. That all started from being excluded. If I was never excluded, I wouldn't be thinking that I need to make money. If I'm 11, if I'm 10, 11, why do I need to make money? Well, I don't need to buy a mortgage. I don't need to pay for insurance or anything. But that's the mentality that you have in your head once you leave school and once these people do get to you. And it stops you from being a kid. It stops you from being a child. It stops you from doing everything that you were supposed to do to actually grow up. It makes you grow up a lot faster. In these poverty areas and these low income areas, a lot of kids grow up faster than what they should have. A lot of kids ain't kids no more. Like if you see social media nowadays, kids ain't kids no more. They always act older than what they should be. And it's through the lack of understanding and the lack of teachers wanting to teach. And it's through everyone just giving Black minorities a certain stigma that we're aggressive. Because if we're sitting in the classroom and we do one thing, they will take it as a sign of aggression. When it's not a sign of aggression, or they will use slang. Like when people use slang in classrooms, they will see it as a sign of aggression or a sign of not wanting to actually live by the same standards as everyone else. But everyone else ain't the same. We're all not the same at the end of the day. We all got our own thinking. We got our own ways of thinking. And I feel like the teachers, even county lines, it wasn't a thing back then. So a lot of people have escaped in that. It's only become a major thing now, and school exclusion is only become a major thing because when I was getting excluded and when I was getting into trouble, they was treating me like an adult. They caught me, I will be honest right now, they caught me in a car with a lot of drugs and a lot of money. I was 12. There was an older guy inside that car. But what they said to me is I was the mastermind of the whole thing. What I wanted to ask them is what in your right mind you would think a 12-year-old on the back of a back seat with a phone and a lot of money and a lot of drugs is the mastermind? How could, where did he get it from? That's the question. And who is the driver that he was with? And who is the person who's always calling his phone? That's the thing, but they never thought of it like that. They just thought of it as he's been excluded from school. He's been a bad child. It was the lack of understanding. And that's why I say it's always about the lack of understanding, because they're not willing to even learn new ways to how to deal with these things.
Did you ever get any understanding about why they came to that opinion that it could be a 12-year-old? Did they ever justify that in your eyes?
Because I'm Black, that's why. You don't have to justify nothing when you're Black. A lot of things that the police would do, like being Black justifies a lot of things. You stop my car, all they have to say is, oh, we smell marijuana in the car. And that justifies it, them putting their hands on me. It's like if a group of white boys were walking in tracksuits and hoodies and in the same environment, then you put a group of Black boys behind them. Then you tell the police to stop a group of males. Which one are they going to pick? They're going to pick the Black people because that's what they learn. That's what they're trained to do. Through my life, there's always been an excuse of, oh, well, you come from the area, so that's why we stopped you. Or there's been a robbery, or you fit the description. That is the one that I've heard the most. You fit the description. What is the description? Being Black.
Yeah. Solemn words again, Stefan.
Is that, Stefan, so is that your opinion right now? So you spoke about when you were younger and that was your perception, that was your experiences. What about now? Is this how you feel? Is that still happening to you? So, you know, are you still getting stopped and you feeling, it's because I'm Black? You know, this is still happening to me as a grown man.
Yeah. The other day I was on my electric scooter. I wasn't riding it. Armed police stopped me. And this is the question. Armed police don't stop regular people. And I know this. So they stopped me and they had their hands on their firearm. So I told them, can you kindly remove your hand from your firearm because you're trying to intimidate me? And quite frankly, I don't like it. And he said, no, I can't. It's for my own protection. For one, you didn't know who I was. There was no calls in that there was any shootings in the area or anyone carrying a knife. So why would you stop someone with your hand on your firearm? And I told them I had certain mental health problems. And their question, they said to me, we never asked you about that. We asked you where you're from. So my thoughts and opinions are they don't, just like a leopard don't change his spots, they don't. Until someone actually comes in there and actually starts taking action for what these people are actually doing, then no change is going to come.
So what actions are you taking then, Stefan? What are you doing about it?
I'm campaigning against them.
But the first step that you can make is to make a formal complaint. The IOPC will listen to you. They will support you. And I hear what you're saying, but you know, you've got people who are backing you, supporting you. Make a complaint and follow it through.
I've made loads of complaints over my life, so I don't want to make no more complaints because I know what happens. Nothing never happens. If you complain, it takes long. Then when it comes back, they ask the officer, did he do it? Then he says, no, I didn't. Then that's the investigation over. Because I've been through situations like this where I make complaints.
Wow.
I make complaints that I've been assaulted by these people. I've been racial abused by police. I've made complaints. My stuff's been taken. Complaints don't work. Why do you think if you ask a black young male, would he ever make a complaint against the police? He would say, no, why am I going to waste my time?
They wear cameras. So Stefan, we're working with the police, we as in Elevated Minds, and loads of young people and more young people are joining us. And most of them hate the police. And those are the words they use when they came to us. We hate the police because this is how they're treated. So what the young people are doing now, they are training the police, and they've started with the new recruits to say, this is how you should be talking to us. This is how you should be treating us. And so they're getting to know them. And they talk about racial awareness, cultural awareness, and you know, this is what we're experiencing when you're racist towards us. This is what we experience, you know, when you show your bias, etc. And that's one way in. But another way in is to say they wear cameras. They've got a duty towards everyone, you know, in the community. And so when they do something wrong, if you're by yourself, you can use your camera as evidence to the way they're treating you, but they wear cameras that are supposed to be put on straight away. And so, and I hear what you're saying about a complaint, and I believe it takes a village to raise a child, and we all have to work together. And something happens to you, you go to whoever you need to go to get that support, to get something done about it. Not every police officer is bad. That's my experience. Not every one of them, not everyone is bad. But then you get the ones who treat you the way they do, then that makes it bad for everybody else who's trying to change the system. And so we have to do something about it, we as the community, Stefan. And so as much as it's long and you feel nothing comes of it, we need to support you and everybody else who experiences that, so that things can change, because it has to change. I don't want to see the next generation coming up and they're saying the same thing as you. My grandchildren are saying, this is how I'm being treated by the police. It has to stop, and it starts with us.
With me, I've always knew my potential. Now, I've done horse riding, that's the thing. Even though when I was involved in that lifestyle, I was still doing good. I was doing rowing, I was doing the fireman course, I was doing snowboarding and horse riding. So they only saw one side and one perspective of me. They just saw a young black angry man. That's all they saw. I met one police officer. He used to make me laugh. He used to say, I'll give you 10 seconds to run. It sounds funny, but he used to do that. He says, anyone that gets caught behind, they're getting arrested for a knife. These are things that police officers do behind the scenes. And when you say, oh, not everyone is the same, I've dealt with a lot of police officers in my time, a lot of them. And they all betray the same thing. They use aggression. When you do tell them you got mental health, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, Their job is to get you in handcuffs and put you in the station. If you are having an anxiety attack, yes, they say you're having an anxiety attack, it doesn't matter. As long as we get you in this car, then our job's done. It's just like body cameras. They have it, but they don't use it. There's situations where even when they stop me, they're supposed to have their body camera on, they didn't. Or when they stopped me before, they were supposed to have their body camera on, but they didn't. Why? Because they want to get away with something that they shouldn't be getting away. If you use your phone, the police officers will snatch your phone out of your hand. And then when you move, they would say, oh, you tried to assault me. I know I'm not the only person that's seen it. Someone's used their phone, the police officers tried to grab it, and because they're not giving it over, they get more hands-on with them.
Stefan, are you always by yourself when you encounter the police?
Yeah, I'm always by myself. I don't follow a crowd. That's the thing. And I don't dress in the tracksuit because I already know these things. There's a lot of things that police say is what you wear. So I don't wear tracksuits.
Yeah.
I don't wear caps. I don't, like, there would be no reason to stop me if you was to see me. I wear bright colors. I'm not going to do nothing. I'm smiley. I'll talk to you nicely. But them, they just see another black boy. That's what it is. He might have weed on him. He might have a knife on him. They're judging the book, but they're judging the book by its cover before they even know what it is.
Yeah.
Can I ask Stefan another question? I promise I'll shut up after this.
Yeah, and then we'll get Rose in.
So Stefan, so it would be, and I'm going to invite you to one of our training sessions where you can talk to the officers about exactly what you're saying now, where you share that with the officers to see what they say. Because if you're always by yourself, they never put the cameras on. This is what they do. You need a platform to be able to tell them this is exactly what you are doing to young black youths like me. I don't dress typically like the black youths. You do stop, but they're still stopping you and do that. You need a platform, and I'm offering you a platform.
Thank you. I'll be happy to take it.
Brilliant. Well done. Rose, come in at last.
It's in response to what Doreen was saying. So I'm part of an organisation that is also working with the police, and as great as that is, I think it's a really amazing opportunity. At the same time, I still think the reason it wouldn't have as much of an effect at the moment as we want it to is because it still comes from the system having that kind of culture themselves. That's what they infiltrate into their whole system, all their units, which is why they still do that, even though we might be telling them something. Because our job mainly is trying to convince them as to why what we're trying to tell them is important over what they've already put in, what they think is important. So that's a hard thing to do, especially when they are as high as they are and how closely connected to the government they are as well. So I think the best thing to do in that situation is to always have an alternative in that process. So by the time you get to that destination where they actually do change things, you've had an outlet for young people to be able to get to that destination without going through the route that's causing them difficulty, without going directly to the people who are the problem already. There's somebody else there in place. By the time it gets there, okay, we're going to help you to make sure that even though things aren't functioning, we'll help it get through. We'll help you get justice. We'll help these things come to light. Because I think so many more people would put a lot more trust into the system, knowing that all kinds of people are coming together to actually make things better for everybody, especially the young people. And I also wanted to say that in systems like these as well, because especially young Black people are getting profiled in this way, their parents get so scared for their children that their children then adopt these kind of the ideology that they're now already a criminal. They're not a victim. So a victim is always somebody who's, oh, you need to be protected. They're not. They're always seen as the person who is doing the crime. They're always seen as somebody who is the problem. So they already have that kind of mentality of I have to protect myself. Someone's going to be against me. I've got to be ready to do something. And their parents are already feeling that kind of way where they feel like in a way they have no choice over the situation. And I think that that's where a lot of other organizations are so like supportive in actually changing that collective mindset, because the way that things have been for a very long time with the police, it's gone down through their system as well as families and their parents all talking to each other. So now they're all teaching their children, who teach their children, who teach their children, and that goes on both sides. So I think it really needs to be tackled in many different levels, because it would really, I feel like there's no point doing one thing in one part of a larger problem, because it may not really help everybody in that situation. I hope what I'm saying makes sense, but yeah.
Thank you, Rose. Joseph, you want to come in here?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to acknowledge Stefan, really. You know, just listening to him speak is really refreshing. Listen to all of you speak is really refreshing, but you know, just Stefan, I just want to acknowledge, like, you're really well spoken and intelligent, and you really understand the issues. And you know, with Doreen as well, I mean, we're doing some roundtable conversation, because we've shifted a bit from teachers to police and schooling, but it's definitely related, and the issues, if you like, are the same, like manifested in the different institutions. And what we're doing is roundtable conversations with police and young people, and it's all young people led. So, you know, you've got a young man like Stefan who'd be facilitating conversations and, you know, asking difficult questions, making difficult points. So I'd be interested to have a conversation with Stefan to see if he'd be interested in working with some of our, you know, young people who are, you know, also in their mid-20s, and also Doreen, because we're looking to do more work in Southwark and Lambeth over the next little while. To start, if we can make some changes with some of the individual police officers, and then you start to maybe shift some of the teams, you know, and then you create platforms like this to start to present bigger ideas, you know, things that need to change. But definitely reaching one person will make a difference, you know, because that might then impact their next interaction with a young person on the street. You know, every bit makes a difference.
Definitely. Well, I'll suggest, I'll give Michaela's email address to Joseph and to Doreen, and ask you to take it from there with regard to building a further link to our younger guests. This has been a really outstanding conversation, and has given us and viewers so much to think about. And yes, Joseph, you just described what has obviously been taking place over the last half hour, that we moved away ostensibly from exclusion into one of the feeder zones of it. But to bring it back, I wanted to ask Michaela if you'd like to come back in light of the way this conversation evolved. How do you view the challenges for mounting a campaign, you know, grappling with legal structures to make change? It's the long game, it's a slow game, but it's a game I guess we have to join. How do you see it?
I think it definitely is a long game, and it's something that we always grapple with in the campaign. You know, this change needed to happen 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but I really do take comfort in events just like this, getting to hear directly from the young people in terms of how they're using their lived experience to actually impact change. We're coming up to engaging a lot with government officials, and hopefully trying to create some change in policy. And the Department for Education has a consultation coming out over the next couple of months, and we're working closely with them on that. We're working with the APPG on school exclusion alternative provision into their inquiry. But also the young people are creating films at the minute. They're making their own campaign pieces. They're making their own podcasts. We work with Donya on a podcast in Children's Society. I think that we're realizing that this change needs to kind of come from all different aspects within society, and the dominant narrative around young people who are excluded from education being one of the main challenges that we want to take on. You know, these young people are full of potential, ambition, drive, motivation, intelligence, skills, knowledge, lived experience, all you know, you just really need to look at them as the experts, and I take great comfort that that's where the change is going to happen. And obviously conversations like this and meeting all these brilliant people who are doing such incredible work.
Anya, come in.
I completely agree with what Michaela has said. I feel like it's been a privilege to be part of this conversation. I'm really moved by the narratives, and I think that's where the power lies, in people sharing their stories and listening to people where normally their voices are so marginalized. So I just give full credit to all of the young campaigners that have spoken today, because I've really learned a lot from what you're saying. And it's just reminded me that this is where the change can lie, in actually listening to what young people have to say, and especially people in positions of power.
Thank you. I've got a question for you younger guys. It's to do with age and intervention, because this project I've been running under the Let's Talk umbrella has been looking initially at the world of knife crime, but inevitably at all the issues that feed into it. Of which this is a spectacularly strong example. One of the things that has been much debated, and there's no clear answer, obviously, because it's probably down to the individual. How do we intervene, not in knife crime in this case, but in exclusion? What is the way? Is there an age? Is there a route into the thing for a young person to be helped? I've got my own experience of Doreen helping 3 young guys in Southwark with spectacular, positive, outstanding positive results. So all that reference to the potential of young people, yes, there are glorious examples growing amongst us. How do we go about finding a way in to intercepting this drive towards, you know, that dark road and exclusion at the end of it?
I think you guys can disagree if you don't agree with this, but I think if there's some kind of mentor for each young person from when they start secondary school, and the reason I think from that age is because first impressions can be a massive deal. So if you have something or someone that you can relate to, and I always think that it should be somebody who understands a lot about the kind of background, the environment the young person is coming from, someone they can actually connect with, they can trust, they can speak about things that they might not speak about about their friends, their parents, their teachers, and someone who's able to guide them through those kind of difficulties that are at school, and also spend time with them out of school, because I think that will help them actually be have a good foundation in terms of support. So when they do go through challenges, which every child does, they may not end up in situations where they might get excluded, or they may face those situations, but because of having a mentor, someone who's going to be aware of their rights, things like that, they will advise them on how they should maybe go about things. They might speak on their behalf if they need them to kind of guide them through that situation, to avoid them getting excluded, or to give them a better option if that's possible. And I think that would be really supportive. I don't know, but just a thought.
That's fascinating. I agree. Stefan, can I come back to you on this one? Because you told us that when you were 12, you were being stopped by police in a car. So intervening at the beginning of secondary school, would that have been too late in your own journey into, you know, some interesting decisions?
Well, I got a different approach. It's not about intervening, it's about believing in the child. It's about not stop believing in them, because at the end of the day, you can intervene at any age, but if you ain't believing in that child, then that child ain't gonna believe in itself. Because that's what happened to me. No one ever believed in me. So I got pushed into the wrong hands. So if you're with that child, make sure you believe in that child 100%. Make sure you don't stop willing to teach him. And if he doesn't learn in that way, find a way that he can learn in. And that's what I think.
Is this
what age, Stefan?
There's no age, because a child could have your belief from 10 to 15, but lose it after that and get into that lifestyle. So it should be through the whole child's life.
Yeah.
Don't lose that belief.
Okay. Yeah.
But don't we hear that recruiting is going on for county lines with children as young as 8 or 7? I mean, we're talking about belief in the child from the cradle, surely. That's
absolutely, yeah.
That's the ideal,
Yeah.
isn't it? The
Yeah.
family nurtures the child.
Yeah.
Is that right, Stefan, or am I taking it too far?
That's right. And for the teachers to not always exclude that child or not always give that child a bad stigma of, and tell other parents, don't make your children mix with him because he would take him down the wrong path, because teachers all do that. That's what people don't know. Teachers will talk bad about other kids to other students' parents. Then you would find out through that child, oh, I can't hang out with you no more because my mom said you might lead me down the wrong path. Where are they getting this information from? The only people that they could be getting it from is the teachers themselves. So I really think that teachers really need to get more training and need to be more screened and make sure they actually right for the job and not just trying to fill a hole.
What bit of training would you devise for them, Stefan?
Well, I really think they should have counselling as well, because sometimes they bring their outside issues into work. Maybe they don't know they're doing it, but it's happening. And when a child sees that and perceives that, you already lost that child's concentration. So you already lost another one to county lines.
One of the problems, sorry to jump, but one of the problems in like the recruitment of police and teachers is it's like who's doing the recruiting. You know, it's like you've got these kind of like, you know, entrenched, you know, like with the police is quite regimented and this kind of like this culture, and they're looking for a particular sort of person. So it's almost like you need the people that are recruiting to be like, do you know what I mean? Like understanding of these issues rather than coming at it from a, you know, come at corporate academic or corporate policing perspective.
That's true, Joseph, but you also get communities who would never dream of joining the police, and you get communities who say, I'm not going to become a teacher, I'm not putting up with that rubbish. You see, so it's
Don't blame them.
one and half a dozen of the other. And what I'm saying is you don't see loads of black teachers, especially in primary school. You really don't. Why not? You know, you see a bit more in secondary schools. Don't see them in primary schools. But when I went to the Peru, nearly all of the staff at the Peru were black. You know, what's going on?
Yeah, nice.
And it's the same in the police, you know.
Yeah, totally.
So communities are not going for these roles for whatever reasons, but you find more and more people are going for teaching jobs but are not successful for whatever reasons. And then you're right, those at the top, especially with education, could be recruiting people who are ideal for the job. What Stefan was talking about, go in and run a pastoral team and make sure that you look after the self-development, you know, look after that side of the young person. That's what's needed, isn't it? People who understand them, people who believe in them, and people who encourage and support, rather than just academic. And the good thing is now Ofsted, where when they're Ofsteded, part of the Ofsted outcomes is the development of individual young people, which is great.
I just jump in and say I think we need to acknowledge too the cuts to the education system and how overworked and under-resourced teachers have become. And I do think that's a product of the capitalist system that we're living in now, where even our education systems are being run like businesses. So there's no wonder that there's not this extra support that young people are very clearly saying needs to happen, because it's all productivity and it's all making money, and it's just a reflection of the capitalist society, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, the shift through the culture of academies, it seems to me, has been pretty decisive, and academy numbers seem to me to be growing in London, certainly. Still, we've got to be careful what we say. But I've been hearing stories of a very negative nature about academies for years and years, and it's very disturbing. I don't see a way out of the structure as it currently is, with pupil referral units being a backup, a safety net, as a last chance saloon. Doreen, do you see another way around? We've had some very strong words from our younger campaigners. How do you feel if you could rearrange the world of education on the back of all your experience in it, how do we take a step forward?
I think the biggest thing for me is to ensure that the family, parents are involved from step one, especially at secondary schools. You know, parents seem to take a back seat for whatever reasons, whereas in primary, they're far more involved in education, in their child's education. Throughout secondary school is where they're needed, because if the parents isn't seen on a regular basis, that not just parents' evening, but seen once in a while coming up for whatever, then that's when you find that there's a downward spiral for some of the young people, because teachers will say, well, your mom obviously doesn't care, or your dad doesn't care, or your kid, you know, there's nobody there for you. So this is how it's going to go from now on. You know what I mean? It's just making sure that the family's involved every step of the way. That's the way forwards for the school. So that if there's a problem, parents know straight away. If you want support, parents are there straight away, you know, and offering the family support. So it's a two-way street, isn't it? And that's the biggest thing for me. Everything Elevated Minds does, we do with the family, because without the parents backing and supporting, then sustainable change is not going to happen, because we can get mindset, a growth mindset with young people only so far. But, you know, you've got to keep having that motivation, that encouragement, everything. And so, yeah, it's the same with education. Parents should be there. Proves a no-no for me. But you know what? We've had 3 fantastic young people here who contributed so well. If we're going to have Prues and they're going to stay, then why not have people like this in the Prues? So they're there giving back, working with the young people, encouraging, motivating, showing young people that actually you can turn your lives around. Just look at us. This is where we are at this moment in time. So if it's got to be there, then you use the expertise of these people who've been through the system. First-hand experience counts for far more than anything else.
Let me ask the young campaigners, if you would, to give us maybe one thought. What would be for each of you the thing your campaigning would first achieve, if it can?
Me, I'm just campaigning for change. There's nothing else to. Change is what we're all campaigning for and what we're all here for.
But what does the change look like, Stefan?
Where people ain't suffering, or people ain't losing their life, or people's actually getting the education that they deserve, and people getting in jobs that they deserve. So all in general, just to stop the madness that's going on in today's times.
So, I mean, it's great that Doreen has offered you an invitation that you have accepted. Do you see yourself speaking perhaps publicly in schools and with young people? Is that something that you think your campaigning might do now?
Yeah, because it's not only that I'm just doing, there's other things I'm doing on the side. So I'm doing all these things. I'm training to become a horse racer. So I'm doing all of these other things on the side. So I'm trying to show people that you don't just have to be one thing, and you don't have to listen to the stigma that carries by your color or your race or where you come from, that you can do any single thing that you put your mind to.
You obviously love horses, Stefan. You brought up horses a few times. It's great. I wish you luck with that. Rose, what's your thought?
One thing for me, I would say is I would love at the beginning to kind of like what Stefan was saying, put confidence into the young people, show them that, yeah, your circumstances shouldn't define what your existence means. And I really want to show them that life is not what someone else is going to define for you, and that they're a lot, like, their voices are important, that their worth is something that other people can't decide. And another thing that I'd really want to achieve, kind of like within the first steps, is identification. So allowing other people who may not be included in that kind of sphere of that school environment where people are excluded a lot, to be able to see the risks of that, to be able to see how dysfunctional the system is, so that the community will actually understand their role and their importance in it, so we can actually function as a society, as a community, because it doesn't work at the moment. Everyone's so divided. All communities are divided. Even in one neighborhood, there's many people who don't want to associate with each other. And I feel like if people understood how one thing really affects your life as well and your young people, you take a lot of ownership and pride over the young people in your own community, and actually put a lot more care into the people that are around you, especially the young people who do need that support, and vulnerable people who need other people to kind of take that role of like someone who is like a guardian of them, where they can actually feel safer in their neighborhood as well.
I agree with everything you said, Rose. Angel, would you like to chip in with your thought?
Through the school exclusions campaign, I definitely want to raise awareness, and kind of just raise awareness around school exclusions, what that is, and not only for young people to kind of know and understand that they're not alone in that, you know, experience, but also for the general public to know that young people who have been excluded are not quote unquote bad children or academically incapable or just overall not capable of doing something with their life, and that was just a small part of their life. So I would want the general public to raise awareness to them as well, and kind of overall change lives for young people who have been excluded, you know what I mean, and children who are in the situation at this current moment. We do have plans like to kind of hopefully speak to young people, improve, you know what I mean, alternative provisions, and to show them that they're nevertheless, they're capable of anything. Do you know what I mean? Everyone on the school exclusions campaign has their individual skills. You know what I mean? I write. I've had many articles published so far. And yeah, we're all kind of doing well in our own rights. So yeah, that's kind of what I want to just put out there.
Bravo, Angel. Yeah, Doreen, come in.
This has been fantastic, and I'm so impressed with the young people. I am so proud of you all, you know, and whenever I hear young people speak so articulately, so passionately, and you're doing so much, it just fills me with joy and emotions and God knows what else. So well done to all of you.
It's good to see so many people on the same page on such an important issue that, you know, the rest of society seems to be on a different page in terms of how things are set up. So, you know, we kind of like need to keep shouting and waving the red flag. I'd be interested to have another chat like this, maybe focusing on police as well, because I think there's a lot of nuance on that issue as well. Yeah, I think that would be an interesting conversation.
Thank you, Joseph. And Donya?
It has really been a privilege to listen to people. I'm so inspired by all of the young campaigners on the call, so articulate, so passionate, so driven. I completely see where this change can happen when you've got young people campaigning for their rights to be heard. So I feel really grateful, and I'm glad that we've got across the point that we shouldn't be excluding children and young people.
To close it, let me go to Michaela. You helped coordinate the presence of our three campaigners. That's made a big impression on those of us sitting around this virtual table. What's a parting message for us and for viewers, for you?
I think really, you know, systems, we weren't just born with them in place like this, they've been created this way, and so they can be uncreated and changed, and that comes from people, and holding power to account is a huge part of that, and that's exactly what our campaigners do every single day, even whenever they're not engaged in campaigning. That's who they are. Their passion comes from their lived experience. It's really unfortunate that they've had to have the childhood and the adolescent experience that they've had. I think that that's a major failure on systems, but it has created the incredible characters that we have here that are driving the change and making sure that no other generations have to go through what they have. So I think our future's in good hands.
Thank you very much, Michaela. And thank you on behalf of the Let's Talk project to everybody who's come this afternoon and shared so volubly.
It's fantastic. Well done. Well done.
All the best.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Lovely to meet you. Take care.
Bye.
Let's Talk a 4-year project responding to knife crime by listening to young people.
A lot of people in government just have no idea, if you like, how the other half lives.